Painting is so much fun because it's not about perfection. I mean, it's really truly about joy and color. So much of the beauty that comes from a painting usually comes from things that you didn't expect to do, just wonderful little almost accidents. Today, I want to walk you through a still life painting step by step from start to finish, but we'll start from a photograph. So I have this photo that I took from flowers in my friend Amy's garden. She has the most incredible backyard and it is just brimming with flowers all the time. So sometimes I'll sneak over there and just make little clippings of flowers that I know I want to paint. But there's no way I could ever paint them all before they wilt and do their flowery thing. So I have this photo. This was a favorite that I've been kind of holding on to that I forgot about. And when I found it today, I knew this is the one we have to do together. Painting from a photo is a great way to kind of minimize the complexity of working from something in real life. Everything is kind of already flattened for you, and it's just a little bit easier to kind of make some choices about shape and composition. It can just be like an easier segue into still life painting. So this is a great skill to have. Let's get painting together and see what we can come up with. So I have my workstation set up here and I want to talk you through everything that I have out so that you can get all set before we start painting. I have a sketchbook for those thumbnail sketches, so you'll want to make sure to have just scrap paper on hand. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. A pencil of any kind will do. I've got my favorite subjects, my brushes, all laid out, and I've thrown in one more flat brush for good measure. I have my palette knife for mixing. I've got all of my colors. I've got my alizarin crimson, my cad red light, yellow ochre, my cadmium yellow light, ultramarine blue. I have my raw umber, my burnt umber, and my titanium white. Fresh water. I've got my palette for mixing all that gooey color up, and I have a 9x12 canvas today. You can use any rectangular size you like if you're following along with me, or any size you like if you're working from a photo of your own. So once you have everything set up, I want you to make sure to go grab a photo. Still stick to like a still life object. I want you to look for something that's really clearly defined where you can see some light, some dark, and some shadow. You can grab something from a magazine or something from old family photos. Anything like that will work. You can also follow along with me if you like. So before we get going, I want to tint my canvas, and that will just provide like a really pretty layer of like a warm glow that kind of pops through your painting at the very end. I am just going to be using a mix of yellow ochre, cadmium red light, and a little bit of the burnt umber because I like that warm kind of rusty brown color that creates. So let's get started with that. A little bit of that. And our cad red light, always a fave. Let's get started with some yellow ochre. That'll be our base. And a little bit of cadmium red just to kind of like fire it up a little. And then let's darken it with our burnt umber. So the only thing that you really want to think about when you're tinting is that you're mixing up some thicker paint and you want to thin it down to be about the consistency of like regular 2% milk. So we're just going to grab some water. I'm going to move this guy over, scooch him. And we're just going to start mixing up like a nice kind of puddle of creamy paint. And you want to make enough so that you've got a pretty good amount to cover your canvas. And you just want to kind of scrub it on there. It's not hard. I mean, if you can butter toast, you can do this. So this canvas is just a little bit of a thicker canvas. So if I'm working on one of these, I like to try to let the tint kind of wrap all the way around the side. It's just a nicer effect. And then the look of it is you've got this beautiful painting finish on the front, and then you can kind of see that little tail of the color you stained wrapping around the sides, which is cool. So we've got our tint all kind of evened out. Let's just let that dry. And we are ready to dive into making some thumbnail sketches. I love teaching people how to do this step because It's actually really playful and fun, and I want you to fill your house with these because they're so cute. Okay, there's my plug for thumbnail sketches. Let's keep going. Take a look at your canvas, take a look at the shape of your canvas before you even start your thumbnail sketches, and assess kind of what you might want to see. Do I want to see it vertical? Do I want to see it horizontal? And then when you have a general idea of what you might want to see, you want to give yourself some options on paper. I want to give myself 2 verticals and 2 horizontals. So I just want to kind of pop the subject right where I see it on the photo, because I really like what the photo already looks like, and I think that might be where I want to go with my final composition. And when you're doing this at home, just play with it. You know, try it really large, try it set way back, really small, really kind of just experiment and see, because you never know, you might be surprised by what you end up really liking. So I have a few kind of sketched out, and I just want to take a minute, pick my favorite. If you want to make more, you absolutely can. But once you're done making kind of a nice little selection of thumbnails, it's time to just sort of shake it off, choose your favorite. So let's see, I think I'm just going to stick with what I got. I love how it looks in the photo. I think I want to kind of keep along the lines with what I've already captured there. So now that I've made that decision, I want to kind of reposition everything so I can actually see the photo as well as the thumbnail, because I'll be using information from both places when I'm getting everything kind of plopped onto the canvas. I'm just looking for some quick measurements referring to the photo as well as the thumbnail. So bottom of the bottle is right around here, side of the bottle right around there. And you're basically just making a connect the dots for yourself of reference points. Now I'm just kind of making a bunch of dashes and connecting them together. So let's do that. This little sketch will help me when I actually want to start applying paint, and that's when I'm really gonna get to know this flower. So just wanna add the kind of general flower shape wherever I'm seeing them. I see the tendril kind of goes all the way up and sort of curls around, which I love. That's part of, goes a little further over here. Just I have a hot tip for you. The hot tip I have is find the most prominent flowers. If you're working from a floral and it has lots of flowers, find the most prominent ones, put those in first, and then kind of doodle the rest in after that. That's what I like to do. You may not have wanted that hot tip, but there it is. The only thing left to sketch is there's a really cool shadow that I'm seeing in the back so the light is flashing onto the floral shapes and then creating this really fun, kind of almost spooky shadow behind. So I definitely want to create a little sketch of that. So if you're working along with me and you are actually using this photograph for your reference, just make sure that you're not looking at getting a perfect sketch down, because remember, you will be painting over all of these lines. So you can see I've got some general shapes, I've got the direction of the stem, I kind of know where my flowers will go, I've got a few ideas for shadow, and now I think we're pretty much ready to go. The first step in still life painting is blocking in. So I just want to basically, think of this as a little bit of a sprint. You just want to get a bunch of really great kind of creamy thin paint all over your canvas really quick. You're not worrying about detail, you're not worrying about perfection, you're just trying to get a few basic blocks of color popped on your canvas so that you have something to work with. So I like to start with the background, so I want to mix up the background color that I'm seeing here. The color that I'm seeing is just like a beautiful kind of dusky dark blue, and I'm really excited to try to mix that color. And I always like to mix up one general color for the entire background, and then one really great color for the shadow. So with this one, I'm seeing this really beautiful kind of stone blue color, and then the shadow almost has almost like a berry undertone, which I think is really cool. So let's start off. I'm just gonna mix up a bunch of that background color. I think I need a lot of white. I'm adding a little bit of alizarin crimson, just to kind of deepen that color and get a kind of a richer berry kind of feel, and then a little bit of the raw umber, getting close there. It's a little dark, so I want to mix some white into it. And I've already got like a nice little dark mix since I went too dark, so I'm just kind of saving that. Now I've gone too far, too light. So just gonna kind of add a little more color back into it. And you'll find when you're mixing color that you kind of push it in a direction and it works, and then you accidentally push it too far the other way, so you're bringing it back. And that's just some of the fun part about painting, I think. Okay, we're getting back on track. Now that we have a base color that we like, let's mix up that shadow because I can't wait to paint that. So let's add a little bit of the alizarin crimson into the already kind of rich blue that we've got. We're just looking for something that will define that pretty shadow shape. So it should still feel like the blue, but it should feel like it has a bunch of dark, kind of deep brown in it. So we are good to go there. I'm gonna start making a pool of paint that's the consistency of heavy cream. You wanna go a little thicker than you did for your tint. I am using just kind of a medium-sized flat brush for this because I wanna cover a pretty good amount of area. So I just wanna start at the top corner, and I'm just using some really quick brush strokes, trying to cover a lot of area fast. When I'm working with students, I like to kind of break down the process of painting to just a simple start with your background, move to your foreground, and then do your object. So what I like to do when I am getting to the point of where I'm painting in a shadow is I get everything painted around that shadow and let it be wet and, washy. And then I just start to transition with a dirty brush right into my shadow color. And that creates this really cool, like softened mixing on your canvas. Okay, so background is good. I'm going to thicken some paint colors later and work on the foreground. You're not worrying about getting it too perfect. You're just trying to get a nice color for the main area and then a little bit extra for the shadow. So we've got the foreground done. I think we should paint the bottle first and then move on to the flowers because the flowers are going to require just a little bit more finessing. The next step is going to be to mix up a bottle color and then mix up a darker bottle color. 2 bottle colors. So I've got my colors. I am gonna grab my filbert brush, mix up that dark brown, and just like we did for our sketches, just like we did before, you're just taking what you're seeing and you're sketching in wherever you're seeing this color. So I'm seeing this color kind of wrapping up and around the mouth of the bottle and kind of scooting around down here and then creating like the shoulder of the bottle. So I definitely see there's like this dark kind of swoop that happens down here. So I'm gonna paint the swoop and just kind of block that in because that's mostly swoop color. I also see that I have more dark kind of down low that it looks like it's where the base of the bottle sort of meets the ground. So I'm gonna paint that in as well. I'm just gonna sweep a little bit of color onto the lighter area of the bottle. I don't want to go too thick with this because I love that kind of amber glow of the tint peeking through. So just going to kind of wash that in. So we have the bottle done. Now it's time to move on to the flowers. We're going to approach the flowers the same way that we've approached blocking in everything else, but because these are a little bit more delicate flowers, I want to be a little bit more kind of aware of the shape of them. So instead of just kind of plopping them in there, we're going to actually try to finesse the shape just a little bit. For the base color, I'm seeing it's pretty close to a white, but when I really take a moment to kind of pay attention to it, I'm seeing that it almost has a little bit of yellow in there, and I think I really want to capture that. So I'm going to start off with just the palest kind of lemony yellow. Yeah, I like that. That's definitely gonna work. And then the other color that I'm seeing primarily for the flowers is sort of like almost like a gray, greenish color. So that will be my kind of dark color for when I'm mapping out my flowers. So creating that green by starting out with a mix just of a little tiny bit of yellow ochre as well as the cadmium yellow light. So I am going to start off with my kind of medium filbert brush because I know I'm going to be using this brush to create those petal shapes. And then looking at my flowers on the picture, I just want to kind of mentally assess what are my brightest flowers. So I see the brightest one is the one there's two. There's one that's sort of sitting on the rim of the bottle, and I want to attack that one first. So he's got a little petal that kind of comes down and wraps over, and then another one that kind of scoots up and around the side. And I'm just using my filbert brush and pressing it against the canvas and then sort of shaping the petals with the brush. This is a slightly different approach than what I've used before, but I know that you guys can do this. So there's a petal that kind of shoots backwards, so I'm just going to kind of tap that in, and then one that opens up like that, which is pretty. And I'm not thinking detail, I'm just thinking general overarching shape of these flowers. So the next one that I see, I think I placed him around up here, and I'm just going to kind of shape him as well. He's got a petal like this, and then there's one that kind of shoots off to the side. There's a couple that flap down. I like this one. And one that comes up. So that's nice. So mixing off the brush, it doesn't have to be perfectly clean because we're going to start transitioning into our shadow color for the flowers. And now we just want to do the same thing we did with the lights, but we do it for the shaded areas. So this flower has like a opening here and a petal that comes down. And he has like this cool little tail, which I love. And this guy has a thing that comes up like this. Now, if you're following along with me and the picture, you'll notice I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just using my reference image as a guide, and I'm just kind of letting these flowers sort of appear on the canvas wherever I want them. So we've got our flower shapes, we've got our darks and our lights. Everything is blocked in now. If you want a little more time, feel free to keep blocking in, get your piece, just to where you want it, and then we'll dive into adding another thicker layer of paint. I have plenty of paint left on my palette to work from, which is great. If you need to mix new color for this phase, that is just fine too. So we're going to start and do the same exact process for the blocking in that we do for the adding thickness. So this is the time where you just want to take a minute, look at your piece, look at the reference image you're working from, and if you're working from mine, I'll be talking a lot about flowers because that's what I'm working on. And then you just want to kind of assess, where do I want to add thickness? Is there anywhere that the blocking in looks a little bit too washy and I actually want to kind of refine it a little bit? You're looking for main areas that you want to kind of deepen and darken. I just want to maybe tighten up or tidy up, darken this area back behind the flower a little tiny bit. Because when I'm doing still lifes, I kind of like to create a sense of quietness around the actual object and then leave all of the edges kind of rough and painterly and pretty. So I oftentimes like to take a little bit of time during the second step and just kind of add a little layer of thickness around the subject matter. So just kind of switching into that main background color. And what I see that I definitely want to work on here is I want to really start to soften that shadow shape and kind of blend it even more in with my background. So I'm just gonna kind of pile up some of the background color right into the shadow and redefine it a little bit. So I sort of lost some of the shape of the flowers of it. And then while I've got that wet paint all around the shadow, I just wanna grab that dark and just kind of start to kind of feather it on in there. So just letting the wet paint of the background mix into the wet paint of the shadow and just kind of redefine that floral shape that you're seeing in the shadow. Okay, so keep thickening your paint. I'm ready to kind of roll right into detail. So get your painting to where you feel good about where you have your areas of thicker paint and your shadows all feel really good. And then let's roll into detail together. So I've got this kind of tannish color, and it's just going to create the beginning of a reflection on the bottle. And I'm sort of seeing it down low here. So I see it kind of creeping up the side of this bottle and just kind of flowing through the middle here. Even for these details, I'm just kind of sweeping the paint along because I really do love that color that's peeking through here. And then I even see this color, like it's just kind of scooting down and defining the highlight underneath, which is really pretty. So I am moving into working on the flowers again. This is definitely the detail phase because there's so many little fun things to find when you're working on these flowers. The first thing I'd like to do is just kind of make some notes about where I see that stem. So I'm gonna grab my liner and get that citron color on there. And I'm not trying to make a perfect shape. I am trying to just make a few lines that will gesture in the shape of the stem. So if you're following along with me at home, just know that you're not looking to make a perfect line. You're just kind of making a few little notes about where you're seeing it. So I know that mine kind of starts around here and just kind of moves its way down. So I'm just gonna add that. And then it kind of wraps its little way up around here. Continues there, but it also wants to go up there, so I'm just gonna let it kind of split there. And then kind of wraps its way around here. So we've got that done, and I am going to make sure I have the filbert brush and the round brush handy, because I know I'll be just kind of tightening up these flowers just a little bit. So grabbing that pretty kind of lemony white color, and I'm just gonna go in and just kind of add a little bit more depth to these shapes that I'm seeing. I just want to, adding a little bit more kind of opacity for these flowers, where I see the brightest brights. And just anywhere else you're seeing that lemony color while you're working with it and it's mixed and ready to go. So I see that color defining some of these petals up here, which I think is so pretty. So I'm just gonna kind of sweep that color over what I've already made and just let it kind of fade into those shapes. And it just sort of creates the opening of this one here, which is so pretty. And just kind of creates that as well, which I like. You're just creating one more layer of detail on top of the dark and the light that you've already created and thickened. So wherever you're at and you're painting at home, it's time to kind of hone in on those final little tiny touches. It's time to just bring this thing home. You've done so much work. I know it's looking so beautiful. So I'm about to do the very final touches on mine, and what I'll be doing is just kind of adding the reflection to that glass. And I know I say this a lot, this is one of my favorite parts. I love it. It's like that sort of when a fairy godmother like touches, a character with her wand and it goes ding. That's sort of what I'm hearing in my mind when I'm painting it. So we're going to ding this thing together. So we're not going to overthink it. We're just going to let our picture, if you're following along with me, let our picture be the guide and kind of tap those colors in where we see them, tap those highlights in. So I see one that is kind of an orangey color, and I'm just going to pop that guy in there, boop. And then I'm gonna grab the crisp white because the rest of them look pretty white to me. Just gonna tap those guys on there as well. Boop. And then a little ding here. And there's a few more little teeny guys. I'll just tap those guys in. And then I see one little kind of renegade. So I'm just gonna kind of pop that guy down there. Okay, that's it. I'm so excited. I feel like this is done, it's complete. I've kind of refined everything that I wanted to refine. So now I want you to kind of bring your piece to a close, put in all those details that you want to see, and then it's time to sign it. Okay, that's it. We did it. We have created something that did not exist before, and we should be so proud. I hope that you have learned so much from this chapter on painting with acrylic from a photo. I think there's so much to take here and move into your next acrylic painting project.